Hi, it's Nancy with Garden Scroll, or Scroll in the Garden. I tried keeping a record of my garden this year, and I took some pictures from the previous season, and I started a YouTube channel, and I took it all off, and I think I'm ready to start again. So we're going to try and see if I can start from today, which we're actually getting into the fall finale. It may be its fall finale. Last year I thought we were just going to have a small cold spell and that would be it, but it actually was good enough frost freeze that it did get all the annuals. So hopefully we won't get an early frost. I love the fall season to enjoy the garden, and everything is truly putting on its grand finale in the fall. So, but if you keep up with the channel, I'm going to try to put on how the garden looked all through the seasons. I did have it on as it actually happened in the first one, but in this one that I'm going to start over again, I will start with today, and then we'll go back to the beginning when we were first cleaning the garden out, and you'll see how the garden changed all through the seasons. And I'm going to introduce you to Garden Scroll. So along with the insects and all the little critters that you find in the garden, the beautiful blooms, just so much in the garden. And this year in 2018 I have kept a record of the garden from way back when I was first cleaning it out up until, well, today, which is October the 30th, but also I plan on doing it to the very end of the season, and then maybe just to keep going, and we'll do it again next year. We'll see how that goes, but my first goal is just to get this year's on here for you, and it's not going to be exactly in order. I had it started that way once, but things kind of took over and took control, and I just had to get back on track. So I'm trying this again, and I hope you'll enjoy it. The garden is a wonderful place to relax and get exercise, and it's beautiful and serene, and yet, believe me, it's hard work. So but maybe I can do the hard work, and you can sit where it's more comfortable than it sometimes can get outside, and see all this beauty. One of my favorite things, of course, is the rain, and it rains in the garden, and I get a refreshing, so we can just snuggle in somewhere and just let rest come from the Lord and refreshing to our souls. I don't know if I can get a good shot of this in the sun, but I'm going to try, because this is a beautiful licorice plant. I love this pretty soft mint green color in the garden, and then right beside it there is the icicles licorice plant, which is also beautiful. I love the bluish color that it gets on it, and I've found out that if I put them in one of these pots, this is like the coconut liner pot, and they do well in it. Any other pot in mine usually kind of mildew and the stem gets stem rot on it. But these, they have done very well in this pot, and I will probably try to keep them in this pot each year if I can find them each year. Isn't that so pretty? And here is a couple of the Zahara container zinnies, or I call them container zinnies because they're a shorter zinnie and yet they have that full big bloom. Isn't that pretty? And there's a new white one coming on. It will get fuller too. I will definitely want to keep these and let them dry out and go to seed for next year. They're so pretty. And again, this is going to be right in the bright sunlight, so I don't know how well it's going to turn out, but you can see the Zahara zinnies again here. This is a kind of an apricot orange. There's a red, and there's the pretty yellow. They're all so pretty, and they are perfect for containers. They don't get so tall that they just overpower the rest of your arrangement, whatever you have in it, and they're just so full and showy. Whereas these are some of the profusion zinnies, which I still love. They're not as big, they're a smaller zinnie, but they do usually get a pretty prolific amount of bloom on them, and they're called profusion zinnies, and that's how I remember them, because they just have a profusion of color in the fall. Look how pretty this on the pole here, this container has turned out. When you look back, you'll see how scraggly it looked, and I just kept trying to get things started in it. And once the profusion zinnies came on, and you'll see them right over here, and it's a bright pink, almost a red. I'm usually calling this one a red. And then the orange one's there beside it. It's got some yellow lantana right back there too. The yellow in the center is just a Swiss chard, and then of course the spike that gives it all that flair, and behind it there is the pampas grass. And I need to learn why some pampas grass has got these thin heads on it, and others have the big fluffy beautiful heads that I actually really wanted. But I like these too, simply because the birds love them so much. When that seed gets ripe, they will come and land on them and then ride them down as far as their weight takes them, and then you can just sit out and watch the birds eat. So that's entertaining to me. I love watching the birds. And this little glove is on a pot with alternanthera in it. It's one of my favorite plants too. It has the pretty dark colored foliage, and it trails and just spreads out everywhere. It's very pretty. I've had some that are a lot more red than this one, and those, when they do get in the sunlight, just turn like rubies. This one, I don't think it's going to ever turn that ruby bright color, but it's still pretty just for the dark color. I clipped back my little profusion, these where you see the Dusty Miller and the green in between, was profusion zinnies in pink. And I've clipped them back and I'm saving them for seed, but I'm also hoping that some of these will bloom again. If we have a long enough fall season, I'm pretty sure they will. But we do have a cold snap in the forecast. It's supposed to get down to maybe 40, so we'll see what happens with that. And right on this other end is where I put the pretty salmon pink Magellan zinnies. Aren't they beautiful? And I wanted to get a slightly closer shot of some of the pink Magellan zinnies. They're one of my favorites. As you will find, there's a lot of flowers that are my favorites, but this little blue is a Chinese forget-me-not. And there's a little butterfly enjoying This one little zinnia right here. The diamond frost euphorbia is always great for just a little billow of white. It's like little lights in the garden. This is another one of my favorite pots for this season. And this little hibiscus is a pretty yellow with a pink center, very showy. I love the redhead coleus that's behind this little angel, and one of my very favorites is this stained glass plum coleus. It is so pretty. It trails, as you can see, some of it's trailing there, and then when the sun hits it just right, it almost looks like a neon light. It just lightens and brightens so well. This has some pretty periwinkle in the bright pink, almost red. And then this is one of the globe flowers, the strawberry fields in pink. And I have some of that in red also. This is a pretty yellow coxcomb. And this has got the pretty orange flame vine flowers blooming today. And I was looking back at the June post right before I came out, and this has some pretty little garden decor down under all of this. This was so small before, and now it's just a billow of impatiens and coleus. You can look back and see just how small they started. And this is several different coleus. It's kind of this henna coleus is kind of taking over and standing out more than the others, but they're all very pretty. And right now, one of the things that's blooming is the sedum. And this one is a pale pink sedum. It's all very pretty, and even more it's pretty because it draws the butterflies. If you continue to look, some of the posts will be filled with butterflies. And this was just a billow of white. This is the Sweet Autumn Clematis, and this is after the flower has gone. These will be the pretty seed heads from the Autumn Clematis. I wish the pretty white flowers had lasted longer. They're always a favorite in the fall. There's so much I want to show you, and I think of when I'm out here watering, and then when it's time to just take the pictures or the little video clips for the post on the YouTube channel. I can't normally think of everything, but this is how this little Kong coleus, which is the larger leaf coleus, has grown this season. Isn't it beautiful? And this is my backyard gardens. That's one fence row. Then we go around and over to the other side, to the other fence row. There's so much to do in the garden all the time. There's something to do out there. Of course, spring is all about cleanup. All this that you see will turn into dead, dry sticks and have to be clipped back and thrown away. And all the perennials will come back from the root, and all the annuals will have to be replaced. So this is one of my favorites. You'll see it in the when I go to take the pictures of before, back in, actually like May through September. Maybe even, hopefully we'll have August weather still that we'll get to enjoy the garden, because what I started to say earlier is that I love the fall because you can enjoy the garden. Until the fall weather comes along, the heat just, it's a torture to be out in the garden, no matter how pretty it is. It just, that heat will just drive you back in, and even the plants suffer through it, and I lose a lot of them too. You can tell this little in between the lovely, this is what I was going to say about enjoying this, is because I love this Dusty Miller with the long flowing Silver Falls Dutch Chandra, and then you can put anything in there with them, and it just draws it together and makes it a wonderful arrangement with this. And of course I have the redhead coleus, and then there's another little red coleus that can take the sun right here beside it. You may be able to tell that right back behind that I've tried to put another little coleus there, but the heat actually is looks like it's not going to allow it to go ahead and go. But it may, if it gets a little cooler without getting too cold for it, because the coleus can't take very cold heat, a very cold temperature. But hopefully we won't get it so cold that it's going to make them shrivel up and give up the ghost for the season. And this is one of my this is a variegated leaf hydrangea, and this is the kind of bloom it has. Isn't that gorgeous? I just love how the little stamen comes down and makes like a pendulum on there. And while we're right in this area, I'll show you also this. This is a trailing purple splash pepper, and I love it because of the color. Look at all that color in there. It's more purple and almost black than it is green. It's got a little bit of green, and usually it has quite a bit of white on there. There's a little on this one. I planted, I don't even know how many, probably 30. I got this one, I don't know why, because I would absolutely love to have these all over the garden for just color and the way they trail. They're just a beautiful plant. I thought this little periwinkle was looking pretty, so I thought I would zone in on it for you with the red with the white eyes. Isn't that pretty? This pretty little plant with the dark green leaves and the pretty purple bloom is a Plectranthus, which is a cousin to the coleus, and it's a very desirable plant. I use them mostly for pots, or probably that's all I use them for, but they would be pretty in the ground too. That's just a very pretty plant. And I see my purslane moss is in full bloom right now. Sometimes it's hard to get it in full bloom because early morning, when it's the best time to take pictures, it's all closed up, and then when it gets full like this, the sun usually doesn't allow me to take a very good picture of it. But this one's really pretty. Here's some more of the purslane moss, and got a little bit of bloom in it. This is one of my favorites because of how it just kind of splays all out there, and it has all the different colors and kinds of purslane moss that I got, which these are the single yellow and single pink, and then down here below them you can see the pretty double. It's got pink and kind of a, well, yellow and then kind of a pinkish red in there. Isn't that pretty? And then this, of course, is my let me get over here a little bit, but this is my trumpet vine, and it was actually one of the first plants I wanted in my garden. I just think it's so pretty when it puts these pretty orange trumpet flowers on it, and I don't know if you can tell this trunk of it right here, how it is just twisted and just turned and twisted all the way up this. And this is a old umbrella clothesline that we put this on, and it just did wonderfully here. But what I'm planning on doing most likely is to get rid of this. I think we've made a decision, which is a hard decision to make because it is a beautiful plant. It's a very pretty plant, but it's also very invasive. I'm constantly having to round up or put some kind of weed killer on to kill it out where it's coming up in various places. Another thing we probably are going to do and take down is this pretty tree. This is a rain tree, and it is very pretty, but you see all those lanterns. They have a pretty green lantern in the summertime, and then they also have a pretty yellow flower in the springtime, and then in the fall this tree will absolutely be a gorgeous yellow. I don't know, I can see a little bit of it up there. I don't know if I'm getting it on here, but you can see that it does have just a very pretty fall yellow color, but it brings what they call red shoulder bugs, which is a rain tree bug. They specifically come for the seeds of the rain tree, and they're just trying to take over everything. And this area has a lot of coleus, which I think are very pretty. I love the colorful seed heads on the coleus, but I mean on the excuse me till I figure out what this stuff is. Celosia, there we go. I knew I could do it. But this is the pretty celosia with the pretty seed heads, and they come in all different colors. I've got mostly yellow, a pale pink, and a bright pink, and I just love them all. I probably particularly like the dark bright pinks, but they also do put down a lot of seeds, and that's a lot of probably more than I want to deal with. I'm trying to get rid of some of the things that are so invasive and that become so hard to take care of. If you garden, you know it's always a work in progress. There's always so much to do, and then so much you want to change. This one little pot right here, this one was up on top of these other two back here, and they're not standing up straight with it on there, so I'll probably try to do something else with those this next year. And then here I see one of my calabachoas has gone the way of all the earth, and a lot of mine have done this. I probably will not put another calabachoa in this particular pot next season. Although they are pretty, and they're pretty for quite some time before that happens to them. So it just kind of depends, I guess. If you want to, you'll have to change them out, most likely. Have something else ready to, when you clip that out of there, because I probably will clip that out just even right now in just a minute. But this is another Alternanthera, and it is, I think it might be called scarlet, but it's also a very pretty dark plant. So there, I just clipped that out, that calabachoa or mini petunia that was right there. But you just have to realize that some things are going to do well and continue to do well and just get bigger and prettier, like this Alternanthera, but some of the things just won't. You'll have to keep changing them to keep the garden not bare, but you know, it's to keep something in your pots to make them look full and lush. You'll have to keep changing things out. Since I have a bare spot right there now, I could put another little coleus clipping or something in there. And there you can see there's another one of those red shoulder bugs or rain tree bugs right there. They just get into everything, and we are very seriously considering taking this tree down. I think I would like a weeping willow there maybe. This lovely little pot with all of its pretty plants in it is another one that I did have right in this spot. A beautiful calabachoa flowing out, and it was, I believe it was a red one, and it was just flowing out all over there, and it looked so good. It never did get real full, but it was full enough to make a showing that it looked good. But it has died too, and I really don't know for sure why, because it's also in one of these cocoa liner pots, which they seem to really like, because they like something that drains quickly, readily, and they don't like their feet wet, but they do like to be consistently moist. So that's kind of hard for this Oklahoma weather and this Oklahoma gardener. And this is my lovely firethorn bush. It has the pretty orange berries in the fall, and it has a pretty white bloom in the spring. I mentioned that the butterflies love this sedum, and here I have some in this pot, and you can see that butterflies are pretty much all over it. So as much as we love our rain tree, I think we've made a decision that we hate these bugs even more than we love the rain tree. So we're considering on taking it down. They just get all over everything, and especially all the outhouses here, the tree itself, they just kind of climb up it, but they're just such a nuisance. You can see I'm up here on the eave of the little storage building we have out here, and I've already put some on some of the posts. You'll see if you look on our previous posts. And the sedum are losing some of their little fluffy heads. It's going to the darker, more seed type, but you can tell that the butterflies are still enjoying what they can of it. And I think it's kind of hard to beat just a little pot of sedum, different types of sedum. Isn't that pretty? And I've been wanting to mention this because this, you can see this little foliage here is one of the Strawberry Fields globe flower plants. This little foliage here is a zinnia, but for some reason these little zinnias made a zinnia more like a globe flower. They interacted some way there, the bees and butterflies, and just kind of made a whole different plant there, which is kind of an oddity. There's just always something going on in the garden, whether it's like this tiny little butterfly or whether it's whatever type of nature it is. It's usually exciting to see. From the flowers and the blooms to the butterflies and the bees and the hummingbirds, the different things that come and visit the garden. And these mums are opening up and looking good. My little celosia didn't look quite so good this year. It's kind of its colors aren't nearly as bright as I would like for them to be, but it's still a pretty little arrangement. Look at this bright yellow, isn't that pretty? And this is another little pot I've had to change things out in. Although the pretty lantana, this is an annual lantana, which actually I've discovered that I prefer, because the perennial lantana, although they are every bit as beautiful, they can get so out of hand, and they put down so many seeds that it's hard to take care of them. It's one of the things I'm trying to cull out, is the things that are just so hard that I can't hardly care for. There's too much in the garden to have to care for those to the extent that it takes to have them. And the dahlias have been blooming for quite some time. This is one of the big pretty ones that I've had to bloom. A lot of them are more small, like this little pink one here beside this zinnia, but they're all pretty. And the mums are beginning to open up. My youngest daughter, her favorite flower in my garden is the Indian blanket flower, and I'm particularly fond of this one that has the little separate quills that kind of each one make a little flower of its own, which this one here is more like the standard, and then this one is the one with the little quills on it. They're both pretty. And this is a Henry Eiler's daisy, Rudbeckia. Isn't that pretty? And I'm especially fond of clematis, even though here in our Oklahoma summers, this is mostly what it looks like right here. And I found, for some reason, if you clip that all back, I've had one to completely die out on me, but if you just kind of wait and then rustle it off, they will come back and be beautiful again. And this is a golden carrier bush, which I really love. I'm kind of fond of yellow. Sometimes I say yellow would be my favorite color if I had a favorite color, but it's kind of like asking you to have a favorite of your children, because I just love all the colors. And then if you'll notice this one little black and blue salvia bloom that's still blooming, when those two come together, they do make a very pretty showing, and they just play wonderfully off of each other for color. And then these little double-tiered pots have been pretty nice this season too. I wanted to show you especially this last one here, because it's my favorite, and it's my favorite because it has the calabachoa in it. And I really love this little pink and white color, for one thing. But for another, look at that. It stayed all year. All of my calabachoas except this one. And there's a pretty abutilon, the flowering maple, that's looking good today. But this, I will definitely put some more calabachoa in these pots. I think I've already said it once on one of the previous posts. But I think I'll probably put them in all of these three and see if they will do as well as this one has done. This actually is the first time I've ever had a calabachoa to last all season and look better, to continually looking better, although sometimes it's not quite as much in bloom, but the foliage and everything is still there. And I know I can still tell that there is. If I look underneath here, I can see this, which seems to be the way the calabachoa goes. But this one, instead of dying, it's just keep looking pretty. The asters have just started blooming recently. They've been blooming for a little while, but they're always a welcome sight in the fall also. This one is the white-eyed Susan vine on this is actually not an obelisk, it's a tomato cage, but it works well too for putting vines on. This was another little pot that I was looking back at how it looked in June, which was just a tiny little form of this. This billowed out and just become just a great showing. And this is a strawberry drop coleus, And I can't remember the name of this one, this darker one, edged in green. It's a very pretty coleus too, as well as this one, which is it's a little bit of a trailing coleus too. These are, and they're just real pretty. And of course the ruffled leaf green one, that's also very pretty, and it just made a pretty little arrangement all there by itself, just all together. And then right below it here is my autumn fern, which I do not do well with ferns either, but this one is certainly trying here. It's liking this spot. It's the best I've ever done with one. I would love for it to grow huge and beautiful. And then right there, this one right here is a Corydalis. It's also a lot bigger than I expected it to get. I didn't know they got this big. This is the first time I've had one that actually survived and grew. And I see this little zinnia has a butterfly on it. Get it on here for you. This was my white and green little container, which a lot of people do the white and green garden, and I do think it's pretty. There's just something so pretty and soothing about it. But I see that there in the background the snapdragons are coming up in the pretty dark pink. And then I've got the pink celosia here in front of it, so it kind of took totally away from the green and white theme, which I do love, but I would do it more like this in a container because I just love color. Here's some more of that pretty Plectranthus. Both of these are actually this pretty green, and it has a very soft feel like a lamb's ear. And then this is the one with the dark green foliage, and it has a pretty purple bloom in the late summer and fall. And it's very pretty even without it, just because of the dark green foliage with the even kind of little bit of black in the stem. And it's just really pretty. I've enjoyed this plant this season also. It's got a very pretty little blue. I love the soft blue colors in the garden. It's not a very big plant, and I'm not good at saving houseplants. I will try to save it and try to bring it back out next year, but like I say, I'm just not good with houseplants at all. So hopefully I'll be able to save it and it'll get bigger through the years, but I know I can't depend on that. And here's some of the surprise lilies. They call them that because actually they come up with just a stalk. There's no foliage on them. That the foliage comes in the spring and then it goes away, and then in the fall they just put up a bare stalk, and surprise, this pretty little bloom comes on the end of it. And this is another one of my favorite profusion zinnias. This one is the white and pink in the same bloom. It's very pretty. I'll be saving these for seed for next year too. And this little obelisk has the black-eyed Susan vine growing on it. And this is my little water garden, my little water feature, which has cattails, and it has some of the pretty Louisiana iris in it. So I do enjoy this, but hopefully someday I would love to have a large pond with a little waterfall that gives you that pretty sound of water in the garden. But in the meantime, till I can get a larger one, this one is nice, and actually I would keep this one too. Gives me a place to do the cattails. So I hope you've enjoyed our first post, and our first garden scroll. And if you did, please click like and also subscribe so you won't miss any. We're going to finish out this season from right here. We'll go on into it, and then when the season is finished, we'll start over from the beginning when we first began cleaning out the 2018 garden.